My name is John Lynch, and who we have today is Kenneth Madden from Galway. Kenneth is a non-dual teacher. He'd probably say apparently. And
well, I'd say I'm not a teacher. That's the first thing I'd say.
I was waiting for it. I don't know what it is.
It's not a teaching, it's a sharing, yeah.
Straight into it, and he's got a website apparently.
I can never let that one go by without jumping in.
KennethMadden.net. What an introduction. How are you?
I'm good, yeah. Good. It's nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a number of years.
Well, yeah, last time was I think it was in Meath, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, we were supposed to see in Galway, but it never happened. So I think it was Meath. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
So, yeah, I saw you that day, and it was just clear and obvious there was nobody here. Yeah. A lot of things happened for me in my journey and stuff, but it's quite something else when it's seen. When did you get that clarity as such?
Well, the first thing I always say is that nothing happened. That's the first thing really to note, is that it's not a happening. So the communication here is not about something that happens to somebody. And that's very hard for the person. It's impossible for the person really, because they live in a world where they feel like a separate person and things happen to them. So the first question that is usually asked, as in here at the moment, is what happened to you, Kenneth? So the nearly always the answer is, well, nothing actually happened. And then we can get into that a bit more, and we do usually. So what happened is an appearance. It's something appeared to happen, and essentially the nub of what I'm sharing, or what's being shared, is that there is no separate person. I'll just move you up here a small bit there. That's better, yeah. So there is no separate person. There is no separate individual person, and actually there never has been. There never has been, and that can be seen by nobody. When that's seen, it's not. There's no sequence of events that brings that about. So the story for Kenneth was that a friend recommended a meditation weekend for me that she had been on something similar, and it was a really good friend of mine who were really just really trusted and really enjoyed. And it was coming at a point, I think I was finishing doing a master's or something, and it just came at a point, I was like, yeah, that sounds great. So I had no kind of idea what I was doing, which is interesting. I had no kind of expectation or idea really. And then on the second day, everything was just seen as it was. Everything was just seen, and it was actually in the kingdom down your way, John. So I'm sorry, I lie. I'll be killed. It was in Beira. It was below ye.
Okay.
Better again. And I looked across at some hills. Maybe it was the kingdom I looked across at. And the hills suddenly, literally, it was everything just was, and it was the same as I was seeing it before, exact same, except it wasn't the same at all. Everything was new, you could say. It's totally indescribable. And so that's as close as I could come really to talk. It's indescribable. But logically then, Kenneth would have thought that it was something to do with the meditation, because this was bigger than any experience I'd ever had. It was just absolutely mind-blowing. And so it was undeniable. It was just, there was something different than the normal perception. And what was it? That's the question then. What was it, and how can I suppose it's kind of like, how can I have it or integrate it or whatever? So then I would say the kind of interest, I was launched into spirituality really in a very real way, because it was on the back of this boom kind of thing. But from the very beginning, I very much felt, I was doing a lot of meditation, but I very much felt from the very, very beginning, who's meditating and where is there to get to? Because what I had seen was it's only just this, like whatever is appearing to happen is just unknowable, indescribable. And, you know, it was just, that's it. It's whatever appears to happen. So how could I approach it? how could I get where I already am, if you want to put it that way? I remember thinking about it that way. Sure, if it's only this, how can I do something to get here? And there was all these questions going around. So I suppose to sum up the story is for about a year-ish, I listened to everybody. I read tons and tons of books. I went to spiritual groups. Some of it was kind of interesting and inspiring for a while. I heard Tony Parsons, The Open Secret, and that's when what apparently happened that time, it completely echoed that. And I saw it was the first communication I'd heard that was describing it in a way that resonated. And really, to put it simply, the description was that nothing happened to Kenneth. It's that Kenneth fell away and that Kenneth was never real to begin with. And then that just totally resonated here. And that it was the beginning of the end, really. Kenneth didn't last much longer after that. And so essentially in that then was born at the same time came out of that was a total passion for talking about this, a communication. And that's going back probably 12 years maybe, or in around that. Essentially what's the communication is a sharing, that a suggestion that there's actually only energy, there's only what appears to happen, which is everything being nothing, and it's actually unknowable, and there's no you in it. So that sense you have a feeling like a separate person, a you, is artificial. And then that's just shared without agenda, without anything, and it just resonates, and it's heard as it's heard. So I suppose the long answer to your question, John, it has to always, from my point of view, come back to nothing actually happened to Kenneth. Yeah. It was seen that by nobody that Kenneth was a story, and there was never a separate individual Kenneth. So it happened to happen with meditation, which is almost kind of cruel in a way, because the meditation didn't make it happen. And that's the part that people can't get their heads around at all. They have to, especially people who are into meditation, they feel, well, it had to have been the meditation. It wasn't to do it. Nothing that appears to kind of precede it has any relevance to it, because it's actually already the case that there's only just nothing and everything.
That's huge. Really. Huge. Yeah. It's like, whoa.
Boom. Yeah. Kind of straight into it there, but yeah.
Straight in. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. There's a lot in that, Kenneth. Even straight away, I'm thinking when you're meditating, my opinion is that there's different versions of meditating. I mean, you could be meditating something, but a meditative inquiry, self-inquiry is totally different to a standard meditation. If you could,
well, you see, this is where this gets controversial and radical from what I'm saying. I wasn't meditating, I wasn't doing anything. It just happened that there was an openness to something, and and it just so happened that that sense of Kenneth just collapsed. And in these, it apparently collapsed because it's not even real to collapse. But then it's an energy. It's like a contracted energy, and then it almost always seems to nearly come back, but it's never the same again. So you have a kind of character then going, what just happened there? What was that about? And then that's where I suppose it's at that point where a lot of teachers then come in, and they will speak to you and tell you what happened. And they will tell you that you glimpsed wholeness, you glimpsed oneness, you glimpsed unconditional love, whatever words they use. And this is what you need to do to get back there. And that's very seductive. That's very, very logical and linear. And to the mind, that's brilliant. Give me that stuff. I want that. What's shared here is there never was a separate person. There's already not a separate person. And any glimpse like that, it didn't happen for you. It was just an apparent absence, which you're always not there. And it had nothing to do with the person you think you are, or your sense of having control and being able to bring something about.
Like you're saying, it's like most people would get the cart before the horse. They want to get enlightenment. When what you're talking about, what I'm hearing is sort of like a netty. Well, it is netty, isn't it? it's not this, not this, not this, and then you're left with your natural state, as you would say.
Yeah, it's not even an approach. It can't be from this in as regards this communication. It's inapproachable, because to approach it means it's already different, or it's other. So it's not other. It's not other. It's already, there's already just energy. There's already just nothing being everything, and everything being nothing. And there's already that sense that you have, that you're there, that there's life and there's you with your life. That's artificial. So you're
So
already not there. So any communication that speaks to you about doing a process so that something can fall away will only feed the sense of you that's there. That's the cruel thing about this. So this, what's shared here, is that it's just a suggestion that's shared, and it resonates, because I'm actually not speaking to anybody. That's the powerful thing about it. It's unconditional love. It's boundlessness. There's a boundless energy from it, and it can totally resonate that there's literally already only what's appearing to happen, and that's it. That's nothing being everything. And yeah, that's it. Like that's it. And then the flip side of that is that that is extremely confronting to the person, because the person wants the neti. It wants the meditation. It wants the mindful awareness. It wants, give me something to do. It is beguiling to the person that it's not that there's nothing you can do, or there's something you can do. It's that there's no you to do or not do anything already. There's already just energy.
it is fairly radical, yeah.
Yeah, it's stunning. It's absolutely amazing. And it's what's amazing about it now is I think we met John about 8 years ago or 7 years ago, was it, in Meath? And it's definitely in the last few years, this is resonating all over this is really resonating now.
Has it really?
Interestingly, I'm hearing from way more people now who just boom, they just like, oh my God, it just totally see what you're saying. They don't see what you're saying, but it's totally seen. It's amazing, yeah.
That's amazing. My memory isn't great, but they did say that the Eastern teachings would reach the West and all this sort of a thing. And I know you're not into but this, why is there such an explosive apparent awakening for people? What's going on?
It's just like all there is energy, actually. Like science will tell you this anyway. This is science 101, is all there is energy. I mean, it's just energy. That's all there is energy. But we feel like that we are separate people in a world, and we have a life. So there's life and my life. And all of that is a total dream. And the solid reality of the world that we are so accustomed to is being kind of shook in all sorts of ways, and all sorts of kind of power structures are very much, the foundations are kind of crumbling, and the traditional view of unquestioned following of authority, all of this, it's all on shaky ground. And energetically, in what's apparently happening in the world, there's an openness to different things. Basically, that's the way I'd say it. But again, I'm afraid it's nothing to do really with, I mean, Eastern religions and all of that, although they might, I think, especially coming from maybe a Roman Catholic background, they seem more liberating and freeing and less dogmatic, and probably are in a lot of ways. But this, what's been suggested here, is beyond any religion, or is nothing to do with any religion or spirituality. Actually, it's complete poverty. It's when this is seen, there's no, it's not about believing anything or knowing anything. And there's a complete in loveness with what's appearing to happen. And it's very obvious that there are no separate people anywhere, and there never have been. And it's very ordinary. It can't be described. I can't describe it, and nobody can describe it, but it's extremely ordinary.
Do you know what you are?
I don't know anything, actually. That was when you fall away, the sense of knowing apparently fall away. the sense of knowing falls away with it, because the sense of knowing is absolutely the person living in a closed loop of knowing. So actually here, all there is just what appears to be happening, literally just what appears to be happening. Now it's voice, a sensation of headphones, a sensation of sitting, whatever visually is coming in. And that's all there is there or anywhere else for anybody else. But it's very obvious that people report themselves, experience themselves to feel separate. And if I was to give that example, excuse me, if I was to give that example again, it would be that I have headphones on, I'm sitting on a chair, I'm talking, and whatever else examples I gave. What's been suggested is that all of that is an addition, an artificial addition. So whatever's pouring through the senses, so sound is pouring through, the person feels that I'm hearing the sound. They feel that I'm speaking and I'm sitting on the chair. So there's this real lived sensation of feeling like a separate person. It's not an idea. It's a really lived feeling of feeling separate. And the suggestion is, you're not there. You're not there. You never have been. So like you are continually adding yourself to everything. I'm hearing, I'm seeing.
There's a lot of things happen for me in my search, apparently, and they're all just, all the experiences are just nice cup of tea, whatever. But that day in Meath, you were talking. I can still see you. Actually, I have a snapshot.
I know, I can see you laughing in the front row, actually. Yeah.
And suddenly, I don't know, but it was like,
I saw you laughing. I can see you can kind of see when it's resonating. You can especially when there's laughter, it can kind of be explosive. Just this energetic kind of explosive kind of resonance with it. It's lovely, actually. Yeah.
It is quite something, because nothing happened. Nothing
happened. No. Absolutely nothing happens. And that's the mad thing. It's like, because nothing happens, because what you are looking for actually as a separate person is already just what appears to be. It's already just this. It's already simply whatever appears to be happening. So the person lives as though, or maybe might hear what's being said here and thinks, oh, I wonder if that could happen to me. And they turn it into something that they wait to happen to them. And it's actually already the case that there's already it's just literally nothing happens.
And it's I look, relatively I think it's a lot of people suffer from that heavy sense of me. It's like it convinces you you're it, kind of thing. And they suffer like over something small, like they'd suffer all day. And there is a relief as such from that, isn't there? I mean,
it's enormous relief. It's all, like, most of the neurosis of being a person just completely goes. The vast majority of it. It's not describable at all. It's total boundless freedom for nobody, and in total in loveness with what is. There's just what is then. And actually the surprising thing about it is it's far beyond any idea you could have of it. It's any concept you could have of what's being shared here is total nonsense. Let's call it liberation. So that liberation, no idea can come close, and yet it's paradoxically it's totally ordinary. And then it's everything is new and everything is unknowable, and there's a living in the unknown, and anything that arises is it. So as opposed to feeling like a person. So if a shitty feeling arises, that's obviously just what's appearing to happen. If pain arises, that's what's appearing to happen. If a shitty situation seems to happen, that's what's appearing to happen. And it's just seen that it's totally whole and complete. It can't be any different. So that kind of neurotic, compulsive pushing away of discomfort and pulling in comfort collapses, because that's all a part of being a person. And that's the agitation. It's a constant agitation being a person, whether it's recognized or not. And for some, it's more agitation. in that, once there's that sense that there's the world and me, there's a question, something's missing in that, and that you can't put your finger on. So therefore you go to gurus and teachers and try and make millions of euros and do whatever, try and climb the ladder, the corporate ladder, get the big job, get the big house. And you know, boom, you get there and you realize there was nowhere to get to, and you're wondering why you felt so empty. Or you feel so empty because there is nowhere to get to. And all of that is inviting. All of that is the invitation. See that there's no you, there's no separate you, and there never has been. It's a total story. There's just literally what's appeared to happen. The whole sense of the person is they're living in the real because they feel real. It's a really embodied sense of being real, and everything is real to them. They're actually not seeing life as it actually is at all. It's from a subject to object reality. Mm-hmm. And that reality is an illusion.
That's really interesting. They're not seeing it for what it is. That's like, what comes to my mind are scientists. Like, they're definitely not seeing it for the way it is. They're trying to find.
Yeah, they're measuring. That's what they're doing. Yeah, some of it's quite interesting. They're just out with their measuring tapes, and I find it, a lot of it, very, very interesting. But it doesn't mean anything. That's the other thing. Actually, that's one of the things we didn't kind of touch on. Is that everything, when you feel like a person, life is imbued with meaning. It has a meaning. You have a life. You're going somewhere. You're at some stage of your life. Everything kind of means something. The meaning. Everything is beautifully meaningless, stunningly meaningless. Nothing needs any meaning whatsoever.
Yeah,
it's so immediate. Everything is so immediately. It's there and not there. It's nothing and everything. There's no room for meaning whatsoever. It's the person who gives meaning to things, because that meaning is an aspect of the narrative of their life. And what's being said here is you don't have a life. You don't have a life, and you never had a life. You never did have a life. You are life, you could say, in one way.
I like the analogy of, like, there are different sort of bulbs, but electricity goes through all these different bulbs and they light up in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
The electricity gets captured and thinks it's the bulb, and it can't see anything else.
Yeah. There's lovely analogies, like different things like that. Like, yeah, in other words, yeah, you take yourself to be the bulb, but sure, all you ever are is the electricity. It's same with bodies. Like, I mean, you are not the blood and piss and spittle that's this lump of flesh, but you think as a person, you think you are. You're actually just energy. It's just energy now that's lighting this up, and this is all just energy. That's all there ever is. So on death, it's just energy. It's just nothing actually stops or ends. Only you could say it's real and unreal. The real part is the physical body stops and deteriorates, doesn't function anymore. But you were never that anyway, because you are what you actually are is nothing being everything. So it's just an energetic shift. You could put it that way. That is completely unknowable, and anything that's unknowable is very, very scary to the person. And what death is really is your own absence, which is what you're terrified of most. We're afraid of our own absence, and we're actually we're yearning for our own absence, and we're terrified of our own absence.
Is it the body identification?
It's that the energy of feeling separate can do nothing but spin in a closed loop of being a separate person, and anything, and lives in the known. It's all in the known. So anything outside the known is terrifying, and that energy of being a separate person is terrified of absence, because it's terrified of the end of the separate person. What you actually are is nothing being everything, which already knows there's no separate person, not knows in an intellectual way, because it just knows it, because you are already that. And that sense of being separate, there's a yearning just to not be separate. And to not be separate is just your absence, which is just that there's only what's appearing to happen. So actually, that's what's being yearned for, no matter what it is, what way the search appears to be, whether it's for the spiritual or the money or whatever. The yearning from this, as regards this communication, the yearning is only really for wholeness, which is for not being a separate person. So it's in that way that you're totally That's what you're searching for, is your absence, but you're totally terrified of it too. And what's terrified is that feels separate.
It's astounding that everybody thinks, well, most people would, the person would think that they are the body.
Some people feel behind the eyes, very much in the head. You get a lot of heady people. They're very much up here, and they feel like they're behind the eyes. Some people, especially people who move a lot, who are really into movement, they don't really feel as much up there. They kind of feel more embodied into the whole body, but they would still say that they feel separate, you know. But so it's different for everyone. I read or I saw a piece on the Vagina monologues. Did you ever see that play? It was quite big in America for a while. I never actually saw the play, but I'd heard about it it was quite a successful one. And it was the woman who wrote it felt so much like a person in her head, and only in her head, that she literally felt she was carrying her body around with her. And it was the most insane feeling. And she felt that that's what the vagina connection was, that she felt that she had this thing called a vagina, which she was taken. It was this disconnection she had with the body was so stark that that's what that play came out of. Now, someone's going to write in here and say, that's nonsense. It's not about that. But that was my understanding.
All your emails.
Well, maybe it's probably strange for a man to be talking about the vagina monologues, but anyway.
It could be.
Anyway, that's that. But it always struck me. What struck me about that was there's a lot of people who feel so much up here that they almost feel like they're carrying their body, or they're not, you know. It's amazing. But essentially, that feeling of separation, it's not an idea. It's a cellular contracted sense that you're in the body and that you are looking out on life. And it's a really felt feeling, like it very much is. So when this is shared, like this, what's shared is nothing to do with Kenneth, by the way. It's just from nothing. But when it's shared, it's remarkable, really. It's just it's totally energetic. It's completely energetic. And when it's heard, it just resonates with someone, not on an intellectual. Like, it can be engaged with intellectually, and many people engage with it intellectually, and they're just intellectually going back and forth. And even intellectually, it can actually bring a lot of release, but that's not a goal of the message, because they can be so kind of wound into concepts of how they are and how the world is, that when there's a sharing and a discussion about them, they can be illuminated to be total nonsense, really. Like, say, Catholicism, and if you're a good boy, you are a bad boy, you go to heaven, or you go to hell. You won't go to purgatory. They've scratched that. So, and all of these notions and concepts, and then when you start to illuminate them, they can just totally fall away, and it's so obvious that they're just nothing at all. And so that can happen too, kind of an intellectual understand. Some people, there's an understanding intellectually of what's being said, but it's still still feeling like a separate person, understanding that they're not a separate person, and that's okay. That's just what appears to happen. And the other thing then, as I kind of touched on, is that resonance, that it's just totally indescribable. And I'd hear from it more and more. You'd hear back from people, and it's always the same if you get talking to them, in the sense that I can't describe what you were trying to describe. And when I've been listening to you for however length of time, and I've been listening to these other people who are, very similar, not too many, but, and I cannot now use words to describe what you were trying to pointing at. And yet it's the most obvious thing that has ever been. It's just so obvious. And that's kind of at the heart of it. It's so obvious that there's no you, that there's only nothing being everything, that it's just this, that it's the energy of the person continually overlooks it and rejects it and wants it to be around the next corner. When I have that money, when I get that raise, when I get that house, when I get the bigger house, whatever it is this, this sense in life of moving forward in hopeful anticipation of something, and it's always around the next corner. And that's always, that is the energy of separation.
There are so many holes in the story of the person. For one of the largest ones I saw was people thinking they were the body, absolutely thinking they were the body, yet they're looking for enlightenment and they don't know who they are. I mean, it's an absolute contradiction. I am the body, yet I'm looking for enlightenment to find out what I am. Yeah, I'm the body.
Yeah.
I mean, even that is screaming like doesn't even logically make sense, you know?
Yeah, well, like I would say there's actually there's no such thing as enlightenment actually. And
Yeah.
enlightenment is, you could say enlightenment is the realization that there's nobody. So nobody gets enlightened then.
The booby prize.
Yeah. There's nobody, it's not for anybody. But for people it's treated like enlightenment is it's just another thing. It's
Yeah.
like that experience they had when they went there. It's on the wish list, and it's funny because I see a lot of people now taking the enlightenment thing, and it's another box they're ticking, and they just get, oh yeah, I totally went into that, totally know what they're saying, yeah, that's it, yeah, I got that, on to the next thing. And it's hilarious. It's like you haven't got a clue what you've no realization what that actually. But in the spiritual world, enlightenment is it's just a carrot for the person. It's just more feeding of the person. Yeah.
There are so many pitfalls on this path as such, and there's so, you know, it's even myself, I know that for fact. What's a true teaching or resonance or a person that can transmit this? Because here it seems that you can't really transmit it or speak about it.
No, it's not transmit. It's not a transmission. A transmission implies there's two different energies, and one energy transmits to another. It's a sharing. It's simply a sharing from nothing. And if it's a clear message, it will literally come from nothing. And that's it will have no agenda whatsoever. And it will be a sense of boundlessness to it. And it might seem, or may seem, or is likely, it may seem very confronting actually. And so that's the communication. It just comes from nothing. It's more available now than it would have been before, but it's still very unpopular. Like, it's not, the person does not like this at all. The person does not want to be told, the individual does not want to be told that this is it at all. This is horrendous. You're essentially telling an individual there's no individual. So why would the individual want anything to do with that? Exactly. You know, so essentially the individual runs a mile from it, or else another way of running a mile from it is just to get involved with it and know it and understand it. It's kind of like know your enemy stuff, like getting close and turn it into something that it isn't. It's amazing how many people listen to what's been said and don't hear a word of it. They say it's the same as this other guy or blah blah blah. And that's just how it is. That's just how it's appearing. Like, the world as it appears, more or less, like, tells you that you are a person from when you're a child. You have a life, you have choice, so you do something with that, like make something of your life and make the right choices and work hard. And it's all very sequential and linear and causal, and it never goes questioned, really. It's totally unquestioned, this sense of that, am I really, there is a me who has choice. Because to question that in the story is total insanity. It's crazy. Of course there's a you, and there obviously isn't. That's the amazing thing. It's so obvious that there isn't a you that it's totally overlooked all the time. But it's interesting now how a lot of mainstream even is picking up on aspects of this, like, for instance, the experiments in Germany which show that there's no choice, that you add yourself to everything. So you lift your hand and then you add yourself a split second later. That I made the choice to lift my right hand as opposed to my left hand. That was me. And they've shown that there's literally just lifting the hand and then you add yourself. You do that to everything. Now, where like, there's loads of, interestingly enough, there's lots of books written on that too. And there's lots of people talking about it. And essentially what they do is they say there's no choice, there's no you, and this is what you can do with that information. This is how you can make that information work in your life. And it's hilarious to me because I've seen a few of them, especially there's one American lady, and she spoke about these German experiments as if she had discovered them, and nobody else had ever discovered them. And she spoke about it, and there was almost like a preparing of the audience. Get ready for this now. This is huge. And the interviewer was saying, "You're so courageous saying this. This is suicide in the scientific field in your career, and you're so brave and courageous, and it's amazing." And then she says, "There's nobody." And then she then goes on to say what you can do with that information. But if there's nobody who can do something with it. So in general, like, it's funny how it's touching on, and I've seen that no free will thing is cropping up in all sorts of places. Although the general narrative in the world is, of course, you have free will. There's lots of holes coming in it now, because you could open the Sunday Times next week, and there could literally be an article of there's no free will. Like, it doesn't look like there's free will. It's falling apart. You know, it is a story. There is absolutely is no free will.
Free will. I mean, it's a bit like, if you have free will, try and wake up before you wake up. I mean, you can't.
Yeah. It's nonsense. It's the sense that, like, okay, I've got control. I don't have control over pumping blood around my body and my hormones and this and that, but I have control over what I eat and where I go and what job I do, and this, like, but it's very logical too. It very much feels like you do have control. Like, when I talk about the sense of self, as I think I said it earlier, it's not an idea or anything. It is a lived reality. Like, for the person of feeling separate, you really do feel separate, and you feel in the body. And this is just a suggestion then to say that there is actually nobody in there. You know, I always like the senses one, that it's there's sound, everything that's pouring through the senses. There's sound, there's touch, there's smell, there's let's say there's emotions and thoughts. Let's include them. You know, all the different senses, and literally they're almost pouring through this filter of you. So you feel, I'm hearing, I'm speaking, I'm sitting on the chair, I'm smelling, I'm me. But it's very simple. There's just hearing, there's just talking, it's so immediate. There's obviously no you there. It's amazing. It's stunning. It's absolutely amazing. When this can just be heard, and it's so obvious, then, oh.
It's like, it's a non-happening. It can't be.
Yeah.
It can't be happening, because if it was a happening, there'd be someone getting something, wouldn't there?
Yeah. There's there's nothing to get. There's nothing to get. Nothing happens. There's no one to get there. This is totally different to everything else people have heard in their lives about, because it always involves you getting somewhere, either through knowing something and learning how to do, or doing something. It's a sequential, you did, and this is totally different. This really catches people, really. When it's heard, it's like, oh. It's just this. It's very simple, and I think it's amazing to me that what's looked for appears to hide by just being everything. It's like, it's total genius, really, when you think of it, to hide in plain sight.
That energy, that nothingness, whatever that is, you know. If it was something, there would be hell. I mean, imagine if it was something. This couldn't actually happen if it was something.
No. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even stack up logically. It doesn't even stack up logically. That there's but you see, what people do then is, if the God thing doesn't stack up logically, like, okay, so there's this separate God who he or she created everything, and that kind of starts to fall apart, then it just gets put up bigger to, oh, there's the universe. So the universe then becomes used as it's like a bigger God. There's actually no bigger anything or smaller anything. There's no other. There's no other. There's simply energy. That's all there is. There's simply energy, and it's totally unknowable. It's everything being nothing, and nothing being everything, and it's stunning. It's just always new. It's completely new.
Kenneth, you've a book coming out and talks as well. Tell us about those.
I have a book that's kind of stalled through nobody's fault but my own. Although there's there's nobody. But it's, I don't know. I felt for years that the communication most effervescent in a sharing, just whether now it's Zoom, obviously the way things are, but in meetings, and I just book the book. It might come out in the next 6 months, but I can't put a huge amount of, kind of buy the book, because I don't, books are just books, I just whatever. I think watching a YouTube video conveys this a lot clearer. But yeah, there may be a book. Hopefully there'll be a book. Hopefully, in the sense of there's nothing to hope for, but yeah, there'll either be a book or there won't. The talks, it's really more in the talks. So for me, it's been more in, like, I met you at that meeting. I'd been having meetings, I'd had meetings in the UK, a couple of small meetings in America, and a few around Ireland. But it's always in the meetings for me. It's always about sitting with people in a group, and when you're communicating that there's no separate people around. There's an energy, there's a resonance to it. And so since I did a residential last year, not last year, the year before, in Clare in Estimon, and it was great. It was a 4 or 5 day residential. It was really, and I was planning on a couple of them, say last year, 20, and then all that hit. So then it all kind of moved to Zoom, and so that's where it's been communicated, a Sunday night meeting on Zoom, and then some virtual retreats, which vary from kind of a half-day thing to a 2-day kind of virtual thing. And yeah, it's great. It's really, it's a lot of interest, and yeah.
We've reached the end of the show, Kenneth.
Oh, there you go.
We're left with nothing.
I thought we were just starting.
Yeah. And I know we could. It's amazing how we could talk about this. For even
the reason I could talk about it is because I'm not talking about it. Like, I can literally have a meeting where it starts in the morning and it goes all morning, all afternoon, and my wife would come home and, how did it go? Are you not tired? I said, no, I'm not a bit tired. I could talk for another 2 hours about it, because I'm not talking about it. It's directly from nothing. It's absolutely stunning. It is stunning. I'm stunned by it as much as I was when it was first seen. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah. Very simple and ordinary. Like, I know I was talking about Zoom meetings and you were asking about the book, the drawn out book that never seems to get written. But I mean, what's being suggested in this podcast is ridiculously ordinary. It's just already the case. It doesn't involve any kind of podcasts or meetings, or, I mean, if there's a draw to them and they're happening, there's a clear communication, fair enough. But it's literally having a cup of tea, driving your car. It's inescapable, put it that way. It's totally inescapable that all there is already is nothing being everything, and there's no separation whatsoever.
Kenneth, thank you for joining us.
Thanks a million, John. Lovely to speak to you.
Yeah, and we hope to see you soon.
Okay.